So here is what I boiled it down to. I thought there was only two ways this could have gone. Number one, it had to be just an absolute, mistake. Like they picked the wrong guy. The guy lied in his resume. There was no way they had seen his previous work. Or number two, and I think the more likely option is Baker Mayfield. He just paid for it. And then Oklahoma's like, okay, I guess what? To find someone to do a statue for you. What are you looking to spend? And Baker's like, I want to, I don't want to spend too much money. I don't know if I have a job next year or not. And so he paid, a midline price for statue making and ended up with basically what looks like
a Kevin Costner.
Yeah, like a 60-year-old man with a receding hairline with no helmet on doing the Heisman pose in a very athletic move. And Baker is not Matt Ryan, but he was never RG3. And what is an all-time bad statue. He won the Heisman. So I saw some people, a guy I know who interacts with us a lot, Tyler Dawson. I saw some people questioning, like, what did he even do that was worth it? I mean, I feel like colleges do that.
Yeah, he's a walk-on that won the Heisman.
If you win a Heisman in a program, you pretty much get a statue.
Yeah.
At that facility. But this was a bad. It's one of those bad statues. Like, I mean, there's some pretty good statues out there. And even like more recently, I feel like we've avoided this more and more about the bad statues, but this one was bad.
It was a rough viewing, a rough unveiling. And none of it makes sense. Not to mention the statue, which of course the statues are supposed to be big, but seeing him on stage next to this massive statue of himself.
I know. The visual
contrast.
Right. The visual was a bad look for a guy who's looking for a job.
Yeah. So, better days ahead for that statue maker, hopefully. Otherwise, that guy might
just
be unemployed.
Him and Baker are both looking for their next job.
Yeah, no doubt.
Their resumes are shaky at best right now.
Well, and that's a good kind of introduction into our episode here, because Baker Mayfield was a part of that class with plenty of quarterbacks and some easy choices to make, even pre-draft, as to who was going to go that year. This year, however, is what many are calling a complete toss-up outside of the top 5-6 prospects in general.
Yeah.
So this is our mock draft episode that we have been, highly anticipating over the past month or so as things draw near, with the NFL draft coming up this Thursday. Now is the best time here. We don't do the 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 things.
We take one
because
stab.
We take one stab at it. And honestly, neither of us are spending our days poring over the film and dissecting all 100 prospects to go in the top 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So really, this has been a combination of watching some film and then finding the analysts we trust and listening to the evaluators and the teams and seeing what they're doing and what they're getting close to. So this should be fun. I think we have a pretty good grasp on what the teams need.
Yeah.
What they're going to do is a whole nother question, though.
That is, to me, and I think I said it last year, and I want to reiterate it for this draft special. It's the same idea. When I make a pick, I'm focusing on, I've combined, this is the most notes I ever have for a show, by the way. You always see me. I used to just have my phone with a couple screen grabs and some quotes or whatever. This is, I got my notepad out. I got multiple print offs here. And a lot of it is basically what I'm looking at always is, what does the team need the most? And then can they find a guy that I trust from, a lot of draft experts? Daniel Jeremiah, I think, is really,
he's the man. Yeah,
he's become kind of like, I know Mel and Todd are great and they are bigger names, but Daniel Jeremiah is a guy that you really trust, who's really grown in the industry in the last couple of years, kind of exploded. I put all their lists kind of together. and then say to myself, all right, what stands out as far as like surefires and things like that. And you try to fill in a need. Hey, if you need a guard and you're picking 10th and there's only been one guard off, and I feel like this, other guards on, I'm going to go, you know what I mean? That's kind of where we lean towards this, just to give you a framework. I personally think there's going to be a lot of trades in this first round.
Me too. A lot of teams are going to want to trade down. It seems to be the best bet for your
trading
money.
down. And then guys, I mean, before we start, I think the thing to remember is you have teams. I don't remember the last time in a draft in my adult life that you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams. What is that? A fourth of the league don't have first round picks.
Yeah.
The Niners, the Broncos, the Bears, the Browns, the Colts, Dolphins, Raiders, Rams don't have first round picks. You have a lot of teams with multiple first round picks, including good teams at the end of the draft, the Chiefs, the Packers. So I think you're going to see some movement. I really do. And we're not going to try to predict that. But I will put it out there right now. I think the Saints are going to be aggressive. We talked about that before. And now you're hearing a lot about the Lions being open for business. So I think it's going to be a very fun next couple of days.
Oh, it sure is. It sure is. And there's still some players out there that are on the table. So whether or not there's some sort of package deal with, trading away a player as well as some picks to try and move up, that certainly could be on the board. Jimmy Garoppolo being, a hot piece, and Deebo Samuel as well. Some of those key elements to some teams, and obviously 2 right there from the 49ers, but others in play as well. There's still some, hot button free agents available too. So there's a lot of things that could go a lot of different ways coming up this Thursday, but that's what makes the first round so enticing as well, Mark, is that usually pick to pick, you're waiting to hear what's actually going to be happening, because even the first 5 minutes of you anticipating someone putting in their card, it turns to another team's logo before the pick. So
it does. I'll just say this right before we get started. I just want to make a note. This is breaking news. We have also been purchased by Elon Musk in this Twitter deal. We're
a part of that merge. Yeah.
Ancillary. It was about $1 billion he paid to get the rights to the Football Lounge, but we know that's less than the analysts projected we would be a part of the deal, but
we weren't takeover proof, unfortunately.
Yeah, we just knew that, and by agreeing to it from our perspective, we saw growth potential. So we're going to ride with Elon, and good luck to us.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully he valued us at what we thought we would be worth, and that was in the low billions.
Yeah.
So it was, at the end of the day, a leap of faith on our part, because we think we could eventually get to that, $40 billion range, but we'll take an evaluation at about 5 right now.
Definitely. So, and we're excited for the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of big things coming up for sure. And hey, if we nail this, maybe we'll even get those endorsements coming our way that Elon can pull some strings there as well. If we get every one of these 32 picks right. So let's see if we can.
In our contract, if we get all of them right, we each get a Tesla.
I think that should just be a given regardless. I don't even know what the odds of that would be, but it's got to be, in the ballpark of a perfect bracket. That'd be pretty fun.
You're absolutely right, especially with all the trades, the possibilities that would be, maybe close.
If you could predict the trades and the players, that'd be pretty awesome. But how this is going to work, I mean, we did it last year, and we talked about this maybe next week or a couple weeks down the road. We'll revisit last year's draft and kind of evaluate it and see how we did. I can't imagine it's too great. Also, we're not totally sure who started last year. Mark, you think you did, so I'll just start off with one. We'll alternate the picks. So we're tandem drafting the first round, essentially, is what we're doing here. And if one of us takes a guy off the board that we had going to the next team or whatever, then we have to adjust. And that's why we have a couple different options for each team to make that work. So with the first overall pick, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mark already said we're not doing trades, so none of these teams, we're going to take it as it is here in the first 32 picks. Well, obviously, if we feel like a team's going to trade out, we can maybe mention that we think that's a team that could be on the move.
Definitely.
Jacksonville, I think, stays put because they they have the first pick. Now that doesn't come around very often, and they're hoping that that's not the case in the coming years as well. And with a couple really good defensive prospects early on, unless they were to move out of that one to like a 3, 4, or 5, I can't see them moving very late in the first round. I have them taking Aiden Hutchinson.
You
This
do?
is I do have them taking it. I know that Trayvon Walker has been a guy that's risen up to being that potential number 1 pick as the edge, but I still think that they're going to go with Aiden Hutchinson. He was the early favorite coming in to the offseason. I know Trayvon Walker's tested well, and some things may have changed a little bit in that regard, but at the same time, the tape hasn't changed, and Aiden Hutchinson is still that edge that is highly regarded as a workhorse. Is he a Chase Young? No. Is he the clear Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa of the world? No. But I also don't think any player really in this draft is a clear, true number 1 overall player. So
Yeah.
at that point, you got to take who you think is the best prospect, and Aiden Hutchinson, who's been highly regarded as such. I think he steps in, and this defense has holes everywhere. Why not start at the pass rusher realm where it's such a premium in the NFL?
That's interesting. If I was picking that pick, I would have taken Evan Neal, the offensive lineman out of Alabama.
Okay.
So already we're off to a little bit. I was fully
Well,
expecting.
look, their defense is in complete like they don't have anyone.
They
really
don't.
on
You're
that
absolutely
defensive
right.
Unit. So I feel like they can try.
He's a
and make it work.
cornerstone piece. Yeah, I agree to that. I definitely agree. All right, so the Lions,
and they got Brandon Scherf, by the way, in the offseason. So
they did.
That kind of played into it. I was like, they at least got a Pro Bowl, all pro caliber
Absolutely right.
offensive lineman there.
No, you're right. Listen, the Lions, they have a lot of needs, like all these teams early on here. I think ideally for them, they want Aiden Hutchinson. I think they want him to fall to 2. The Michigan kid storyline for them. If you're a Lions fan, you're most likely a Michigan football fan, or even if you're a Michigan State fan, Aiden Hutchinson from being in state and being a dominant player. I think there's a lot that they want Aiden Hutchinson for. So I think they'd be ecstatic if he falls. If he doesn't, if you're right and Jacksonville goes Aiden Hutchinson 1, I really see Detroit being on the line hot to trade out of there, because they could use another 1 or 2 picks. They don't want. I don't think they want to take a wide receiver this early. I think at that point in time, they need a defensive piece. They need a person who can be explosive. I would go with Kayvon Thibodeaux if I was them. I would take Thibodeaux second. I know a lot of people are weary on him. Yeah, that's the pick. And a lot of it is because he's fallen down the draft boards, but his measurables are insane. He is, I think, the second best edge rusher in this draft. And I know and part of what he has to overcome is the fact that Oregon guys have not done great in the NFL historically, but especially from this position. But I think he's a guy who can overcome that. And listen, they need a playmaker, and you need to be able to get after Aaron Rodgers. You need to be able to get after Justin Fields, and Kirk Cousins is a statue, so you got to be able to put some pressure on him. I also could see them going offensive line there to just keep shoring up that offensive line. It's a very Dan Campbell pick, but they need help on defense. So I'll go Kayvon Thibodeaux out of Oregon at 2.
Okay. All right. I like it. And it is a pick that makes sense. Detroit was a team that I struggled a lot with. Personally, I had them taking a quarterback this early.
There's been rumblings of that. That has started to really rumble.
This is where I think we're gonna have different outlooks on the draft, primarily at the quarterback position. I am of the thought that way more quarterbacks are going to go, and they're going to go earlier than what the consensus seems to be, at least as of late.
Who would you have put them at 2?
I had them taking Malik Willis.
Really?
I had them taking Willis there. I think he is the best overall prospect in the class. I don't think he's the win now ready kind of quarterback, but I think they were in a position where they had Goff. They could actually ease him into this thing.
Yeah.
And Goff, they can move off of next year without taking much of a hit at all. So in terms of the contract, it's friendly in that way. But I could also see them easily. Dan Campbell defense. They have a still young quarterback in Goff. They could go that route as well. So I'm cool with the Thibodeaux pick there. So then Houston comes up, and they have a million needs as well, as do most of the teams at this picking at this juncture. Um, and it's tough because I also could see them taking a quarterback. However, I thought that they were less in that um, conversation than Detroit. So I'm going to go with the best available prospect, and that would be Trayvon Walker at this point. They had to go defense. Defensive back would
Yeah.
have been a real big need for them. I don't know if they would take one this early, though. So Trayvon Walker, the edge out of Georgia, would be my next pick here for the Houston Texans. And, I know Lovey's not the guy
Three D
calling the shots,
linemen.
but
3D
yeah,
linemen in the first 3 picks.
it's one of those drafts though where outside of some really good tackles early on, it's all about the defensive line
Yep.
for much of the first round in terms of who are some of the best athletes and prospects. So it's kind of how it works out. But I'm interested to see now what happens with the Jets here for you. But I imagine, are we going offensive line considering?
I struggle with
couple
Trayvon Walker too because I think Davis is so good. Jordan Davis out of Georgia as well.
Sure.
He's one of those players where it's like, okay, because the attention that he garners, and watching a lot of Walker film, he gets a lot of one-on-one matchups, and I don't know how much he's going to get that at the next level. But obviously, the Texans they just need bodies, they need players, they need people with upside, and I think it's a solid pick there. Number 4 with the Jets. Listen, I think the Jets need to work on their offensive line. I know their defense is bad, but at this point in the draft, the way it's falling, if Walker, Thibodeau, and Hutchinson are all gone, I think they're going to go with the tackle. Then I think they go Evan Neal out of Alabama, right, and they shore up the offensive line. That's what I would do if I was them. They have to give their young quarterback a fighting chance. They have weapons. They need more weapons. The Jets have a lot of pieces. They need an edge. They need a corner. They need a wide receiver. Certainly, some help in a linebacker position. But if they can get themselves a left tackle that can be their next DeBrickashaw Ferguson for the next 5 to 7 years of like, this guy's a Pro Bowl caliber player, and I think Evan Neal is the best offensive tackle. I know a lot of people are high on Ekwonu. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, out of NC State. And his film is incredible. He really is. But at 6'4", I just like the length of Evan Neal at 6'7", plays at 337 to deal with, a lot of people, offensive linemen, were getting smaller, and you're thinking, go smaller because we're passing more and you're not running as much. But now these edge guys are becoming so freakishly big and strong. And the way you look at guys like an Aiden Hutchinson who's 6'7", I don't want my left tackle being 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah, you want those wider hips and those longer strides
and that bigger frame. Yep. And listen, the Jets drafted offensive linemen last year. I think it's smart for them to just keep going. You need to form an identity. And with Saleh, that identity should be try to play really good defense because that's who he is. And then can you run the ball to take pressure off and give Zach Wilson time? So I think going with Evan Neal, adding another great body to that offensive line is the smart call.
Yeah, so then next with the New York Giants, then I'm going offensive tackle as well, and I'm taking Ike Ekwonu then.
Okay.
So we got 2 of the best offensive tackle, prospects off the board. And
that's a great pick there, I think.
Those guys are relatively interchangeable prospects coming into this one. Different styles, of course, but the Ekwonu is kind of billed as like the bigger, nasty guy that that can really just.
He's younger
too,
he's sophomore.
Younger, yep, really good, run blocker. And so I think the Giants kind of want to develop that kind of edge a little bit again, reestablish themselves in that way. And not only help Daniel Jones if he has a prayer at succeeding, but help Saquon Barkley get back to that, what they know he can be. Brian Daboll gets his, dominant prospect here coming in on the offensive line to really help set the tone for this next generation of the New York Giants. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer pick for them at that point. They needed offensive line so bad. Tackle or guard, they get their guy here.
So this is a dream scenario for you to cover as a guy who follows the Panthers and works, closely in that region. No quarterbacks taken, no trade up. Saints haven't jumped ahead of them. The Falcons haven't jumped ahead of them. The Giants don't take a quarterback. And so now you have all the quarterbacks sitting on the board for the Panthers at 6. Here's where I'm going to stray a little bit from my own personal thing. I think, honestly, Kenny Pickett, to me, is the only quarterback I'd feel strongly taking about in the first round this year, especially in the top 15. The other guys, unless you have a great situation to give them a full year of development, I would struggle with. Matt Corral, I think has got strong upside. Malik Willis has big upside. But one of the things, a lot of people are saying, oh, they're a lot like Trey Lance, like the upside. But I don't love those comparisons because Trey Lance is 6'4", 225. I mean, the framework you get with a Trey Lance is more like, wow, that guy's built more like, where he walks in a room and you're like, holy crap. Matt Corral is 6 foot and Malik Willis, they list him at 6'1". But when you watch him play, he doesn't look like a guy who's not much taller than 6 feet tall. Like he doesn't have the commanding presence. They're athletic. They both have great arms. For the most part, I think Malik Willis definitely can make all the throws distance wise. I would go Kenny Pickett if I was the Panthers, but I'm going to draft what I think the Panthers would do. I think the Panthers love the upside and the pop that a Malik Willis could do. I think they would, in this spot, if it goes out this way, the Panthers, if I'm the GM, I would take Pickett. But I'm going to pick for this pick Malik Willis.
Oh, all right. Okay. We're going Malik Willis then.
I think the Panthers have their eye on a guy like him. I think the Panthers like the idea that he could be explosive. I think the Panthers like the idea that they're the team that got the quarterback with the most upside, who's kind of electric. He has a Kyler Murray-esque quality where he's just kind of electric. I don't think they're going to be in a rush to start him right away. They have quarterbacks on that roster. And so I think that you could see them, feeling no rush to start Malik Willis as opposed to Kenny Pickett, where I feel like there'd be a rush to start Pickett. And I think the ownership, David Tepper and them, are going to be pro a guy that, listen, if it doesn't work out this rookie year, we're okay with that, because I don't know I think he sits there and thinks he doesn't have the right coach anyways. So I think they'd be okay with that. I would, again, the only person I feel comfortable honestly putting my name to saying I think they will have a really solid NFL career of the quarterbacks is Kenny Pickett. The other guys, I don't feel confident saying that, but I do know that Malik Willis has a ton of upside.
He absolutely does. And I agree that if you are the Panthers, I think this is probably the choice that they would make in this spot. But the only thing that gives me pause about it is that they're in a situation where they're essentially coaching and probably drafting for their jobs.
Yeah,
Malik Willis isn't probably going to move the needle for them this year in year one.
you're absolutely right.
So, and he very likely probably wouldn't start. I would still think Sam Darnold gets the nod, at least to start the season. So that gives me pause in terms of, like, for the future, it's probably a good pick for them. But if they're worried about their jobs this season and need to win now, then Kenny Pickett would be a better choice, because he's a guy they can at least probably feel a little bit better about starting from day one.
Agreed, but I will put this back to you. Don't you think David Tepper is the type of guy that walks into the room and says, I want that guy, draft that guy?
Probably, but he's also impatient. And if you don't win this year, then he's ready to move off you too. So it's a catch-22. I don't know who his guy is. I really don't. I don't know what David Tepper would prefer in this situation. If he would prefer a guy who's, much less volatile of a skill set, or if he'd prefer a guy that's a total swing for the fences type of deal. So something to be seen, but I do think he has the most upside, and I think I agree that he's the first quarterback off the board taken. So it comes to the New York Giants, who could take a quarterback, certainly not barred from it. They already have an offensive lineman they took, but I'm not going to go that route. I'm going to go with a stud defensive player that has been rising up boards as well, and that's the safety out of Notre Dame, Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah.
Huge need for New York here. Their secondary certainly needs some work, and so they're able to help shore up a big need there in the safety department, and a guy that's super talented in Kyle Hamilton. So I'm going to go with him as the pick for New York Giants here in the pick that they got from the Chicago Bears.
What a
So
big safety, 6'4",
huge.
220, good range, can lay a hit on you. No, I like that pick. That's for sure. All right, the Falcons coming in at number 8. Obviously, they need a quarterback as well. And I think if the Falcons are in this spot and the draft has gone the way it was, I think they would be very excited that Kenny Pickett is available for them. And I think they would go Kenny Pickett at number 8. I think the
I agree.
Falcons are an organization, especially with Arthur Blank, who have seen what having a really solid starting quarterback and a sturdy voice can do for you in an organization for a decade. They had that with Matt Ryan. I feel like they can get that and with a guy like Kenny Pickett. He's the honestly, he's got a lot of Matt Ryan to him. I think he's a little more athletic. Obviously, even when Matt Ryan was coming out, was more of a pocket guy. I think the dome is perfect for Kenny Pickett, and is a guy who likes to wear his gloves.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Smaller hand size. I think Atlanta sees this as a pick to where they're not willing to just hold on a rebuild. They have their coach with Arthur Smith. You know what I mean? They want to go get a guy, and I think Kenny Pickett is the guy that can help you win the most right now and figure out like, hey, is everything else in our organization right? Him and Kyle Pitts could be a deadly combination for years to come. So I think if he's still available at 8, which is very plausible, he could be. I think that the Falcons will take him.
Yeah, I don't think those two quarterbacks are getting out of the top 10. I just don't see it happening. And so I think that is a perfect spot. And I mean, they don't have anyone. I mean, Kenny Pickett would probably start day 1 for them, if not, early in the season, get his first start at week 4 or 5. After they give
Depending on
Mariota the
Marcus
short
Mariota,
leash.
yeah, who knows? I don't know, but you're absolutely right, and I think he works for the type of offense that Arthur Smith wants to run. Remember, Arthur Smith ran the offense with Derrick Henry when he had the 2,000-yard season. I mean, that is what Arthur Smith wants to do. Ideally, you have a quarterback who's accurate and is more of a facilitator than it is a quarterback-driven throw it, drop back, spread him out, throw it 50 times. And Kenny Pickett, I think, can certainly be he's certainly a Ryan Tannehill, if not a little bit better. I mean, if his ceiling is a little bit better,
he's
than
probably
Ryan
Derek
Tannehill.
Carr. Like he might have the ceiling could be Derek Carr, which is pretty solid. You would take that.
I'll say this: the one thing I like about Kenny Pickett compared to the other 2 quarterbacks that I'd be willing to take in the first round later as projects, Malik Willis and Matt Corral, he's got the size, a real 6'3", a real 220, not a 6'6'1". Are they fudging their listing? The hands is a concern, but I do love the quotes coming out that he has said he literally wears brand new gloves every time he throws the football. So if it's a practice, brand new gloves. Next practice, brand new gloves. Game, brand new gloves. So that the consistency of that, I do appreciate that. If that's what he's doing, he's going to do it that way every single time. But man, people joke about like, oh, well, no, college guys play in bad weather. No. You're not playing, in Chicago, in Green Bay, in December and January. If you're
against
playing
Kenny Clark and Khalil Mack.
If you're playing a game as a collegiate athlete in December or January, it's a bowl game in the South, and you might have to deal with rain and like 40 or 50 degree temperature. You're not dealing with being in the Meadowlands or up in Foxborough in January.
Sure. He is at least used to playing though in a cold weather city
in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that. But number 9, we come to the Seattle Seahawks here, and obviously a team with a lot of needs as well across the board, could go a myriad of ways. But Sauce Gardner's sitting there, and he's such a huge prospect, really lengthy, rangy cornerback out of Cincinnati. And this just screams to me a Pete Carroll type of guy that he wants to get into that room and kind of have some reminiscence of the Legion of Boom type of body there on the perimeter. And hey, They're competing in a division with plenty of good receivers. They need a true shutdown type of corner, and Sauce Gardner gets them that. At 6'3", 200 pounds, has the ability to kind of contend with perhaps, those DeAndre Hopkins, some of those lengthier receivers. So I would take Sauce Gardner there for the Seattle Seahawks at number 9. If he's able to fall that far, I think they'd be really happy to get him there.
Yeah, I think, it's funny because I have the Jets next to 10, and if Sauce is on the board, I think they go with that. But because they take him, obviously Stingley Jr. is available, but I think, again, the Jets' focus has got to be continuing to make sure their young quarterback is taken care of. I went offensive line for the Jets earlier. I'm going back to the offensive side of the football. I think they take the best wide receiver available. To me, that's Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State. I know a lot of people talking about the kid out of USC. I even love Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave is going to be a steal. He's going to have a Jarvis Landry, I think, type of career. I really do. I mean, he's a sure-handed receiver. What a playmaker. But for Zach Wilson to get himself a Garrett Wilson to really become his, kind of go-to third down, big play receiver, they need to give Zach Wilson a chance, and getting offensive linemen and a wide receiver in their first two picks of the top 10, that helps your young quarterback give him a chance.
Yeah, and he is that guy that's been tossed around as being the prospect there coming out of Ohio State. And obviously had that competition there with Chris Olave for who's going to be the better one to come out there. But, Garrett Wilson kind of has the full package type of skill set there. So it's hard to move off of that there. Although, really, I mean, any one of these receivers
Jameson Williams
could be the number. I mean, Jameson Williams is really, really talented out of Alabama. So that's certainly an area that they could choose to go as well. So now we come up to the Washington Commanders, and this is an interesting decision because the guy I had initially to them is still available, but yet I'm starting to rethink myself if this is truly going to be the way they go. So I'm going to pull a little bit of a wild card here. And now I'm going to stick it. I got to stick with my guns here. I think they're happy with whoever gets to them in terms of the wide receiver department. Yeah. I think they go in that area. They want to give Carson Wentz as good of a shot as possible to make this thing work. They could go on the offensive line, but Drake London out of USC seems to be a good prospect here that would fit well within this offense, kind of a good complement to McLaurin, who's kind of a guy that takes the top off of you entirely. Drake London really could fit this role well. So I'm going to give them him.
He's big. He's a red zone threat, 6'4". He's more of a Mike Evans and Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry is those two together will be a really good combo. I mean, listen, I think the Commanders, again, are one of those weird teams that they're in that kind of middle of the pack where it's like they have a couple big glaring needs. Cornerback.
Yeah, they really need a corner, and I mean,
and Stingley's there, and so
they could have taken Charlie Cross, or Charles Cross. And they could have gone offensive line because they lost Sheriff, but
personally, I think Jameson Williams is a better prospect than Drake London. But
I would agree with that too.
I just think here with Scary Terry on the other side, I think this works really well, and they're happy with that. The Vikings coming up at 12. Then I'm not going to waste any time. They'll take the corner then and go with Derek Stingley Jr. If he's available to me, he's a top 10 prospect, and if they get him at 12, they'll be really excited about that. Out of LSU, 6 foot, 195. You got to deal with Aaron Rodgers in your own division. You need to be able to lock down guys. And in the NFC North, there's not a lot of stud number one wide receivers, so it's not like early on in his career he's going to have time to not have to immediately go. It's not like playing in the NFC West or in the AFC South where you got a bunch of just stud wide receivers everywhere. I think it's a good pick. It's a good fit for the Vikings. That even though they got rid of their defensive head coach, I still think Minnesota historically, a lot like Chicago, New York Giants, they're a team that wants to win with their defense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's something to be said for bringing in an offensive coach who has good weapons, but still recognizing, the overall, seeing the
Team
bigger
need-
picture here.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good pick. And,
And
and
I mean,
look, you're competing now.
they need a
I
guard. They need a
Yep.
guard, but their offensive line otherwise is solid. They don't really need wide receivers. They have two great wide receivers. They could use maybe a tight end, but none of these tight ends have a real first round grade in my opinion. And so I think you take a great player that's still on the board at 12.
Yeah, I had them going with Jordan Davis. I thought they could really use a
Okay.
dominant run defender. But I mean, if Derek Stingley's sitting there at 12, how do you pass
Yeah.
up on him at that point? So you could go either way, and I think they're both kind of can't miss type of prospects essentially. Uh, Certainly in this range as well. So
You
we're
have the
back to the
Texans
Houston
again.
Texans. So
I
the
took care of the
Texans
Jets. You took care of the Texans.
exactly. What an honor, honestly. So Trayvon Walker went to them at 3. They took care of the edge. I'm tempted to go back to the defensive line with
Yeah.
Jordan Davis sitting
Pair
there,
'em
but
up.
I think they have to go and try and balance things out. And they have so many areas where they're struggling on this team. I think they'd have to go offensive tackle and go with Charles Cross here because
Okay.
they just you got to get a guy. And hey, if Davis Mills maybe is a guy that you think might be someone that works out, then you got to try and invest in him. And with the offensive tackle class here, offensive line class really in general being very good in the first round, early
Yeah.
second, I think this is a spot where you got to try and take a guy that could turn out to be a Pro Bowl caliber player. So Charles Cross there, tackle out of Mississippi State, would be good there. And now you got a stud edge rusher and you got a stud tackle that could help stop some of those edge rushers, particularly in that division when you have to contend, with the Colts, with the Titans, teams
Yeah.
that are certainly getting better on that side of the ball.
No, listen, they if that's what the Texans do with their first 2 high draft picks, you address the 2. What do you always say when you're rebuilding a team? You got to start from as close to the ball and out. You work on your 2 fronts. You get a defensive lineman, you get an offensive lineman, and you keep trying to fill in those holes from there. So I don't hate that pick. Tyler Lindbaum is a name. Obviously, it's hard interior, and I think honestly. The Ravens, now that he's available at 14, I'm very tempted to take him for the Ravens.
Be a
but
great fit.
I just see the Ravens looking at Jameson Williams sitting there and finding them another weapon for Lamar Jackson. And I just don't think they can pass up getting themselves Jameson Williams from Alabama. So I'll make that pick for them. It's tough because there's a lot of good defensive players. Dean from Georgia could have been the pick here. I also think they could have gone Jordan Davis, the pick here from Georgia, but I'll go Jameson Williams, Alabama. I just think they need to keep throwing wide receivers at the wall until they stick, until you find Lamar Jackson, his guy. He needs his guy. And, Hollywood Brown is great, but Hollywood Brown is your complement guy. He's not Tyreek Hill. And I don't even think he's Terry McLaurin. He is a great second wide receiver who can you defenses have to respect, but not your number one. If they can, if Jameson Williams can become their number one guy at 6'2", 180, I think it'll just be a really, really special fit with him and Lamar Jackson.
That's an interesting pick, but I totally see that fit there. They could absolutely have gone the Jordan Davis route and started to rebuild that defensive line that's getting very old. But with the they don't even have a Sammy Watkins anymore. It's not like he was a world beater at this point in his career, but they certainly have some holes in that room as well, and that will only help Lamar Jackson out. So I can definitely see that one. And personally, he's my number one wide receiver in this class. So I think that'd be a steal for them at 14 if he's able to drop to them there. So we got the Philadelphia Eagles who have their first of 2 picks here at 15. And this one coming to them from Miami. Couple needs on the defensive side of the ball, and it's a heavy defensive, weighted class here in the first round. I think they could go a couple ways here with either the corner or linebacker addressing either one of those. But I think a couple of the top corners off the board at this point, I think they got to go with the best available linebacker. And man, I don't know who they want between Devin Lloyd from Utah and Nakobe Dean from Georgia.
Yeah, right.
If I were them, I'm just going to kind of go my route here. I give Devin Lloyd a little bit of an edge because I think he's a little bit more of the new age type of linebacker that can fit what teams are trying to do now, which is a guy that can really cover a lot in space, and Devin Lloyd can run with the best of them. So I'm going to have them going Devin Lloyd here as their linebacker, which is a position they have not invested in like at all in the draft, especially in the first round. They just never draft linebackers, it seems. So I really think this is a good opportunity for them to get a stud at that position. And Devin Lloyd out of Utah really fits that multi-role. And you can kind of line them up all over the place and use them different ways. And I think that'd be appealing to Nick Sirianni and company over there. So.
All right, so you go with Devin Lloyd. I like that pick. I think that I mean it's hard because I think Dean is, to me, he was a better college player, but again, it's about translation to the NFL and what you're trying to do. And he is undersized at 5'11", compared to a guy like Lloyd who's 6'3". All right, so I'm frustrated here with the Saints because, listen, the Saints, they need offensive line, they need wide receiver. I don't love them taking the fourth best wide receiver and the fourth best offensive lineman at 16, offensive tackle. Because obviously, you still have, to me, the only player left in the top 10 on my board would be Tyler Linderbaum. And Linderbaum. Yeah, Linderbaum from the center from Iowa.
I just want to say, I just think it's kind of a crime that people have been floating him going to the second round. It's all because of his size. It's because he's a shorter center. The guy is an absolute monster. Like he's gonna be good in the NFL. That's something I feel pretty confident about.
Yeah, I do as well. I just think the Saints at this point in time, when you look at the needs and you look at what's available, I'll have them take, to me, then the next best player. I'll have them go with Nakobe Dean from Georgia.
Okay.
Because they need a defensive signal caller. They need someone to reset. They now have a defensive head coach. Remember,
very true.
Why now I'm losing his name? What's
I don't know his name either.
No,
he's the one coach.
The defensive coordinator. He was there for years. He was a head coach for a while. You got to look it up.
Oh, Dennis Allen.
Dennis Allen.
Yeah.
And he and I think this is one of those culture changing type of thing. You know what I mean? For the Saints. And again, I think strongly the Saints are going to try to trade up in this draft. I think they have their eye on Malik Willis. I think they would love the idea of having Malik Willis sit for a year behind Jameis Winston and just let Jameis play as they rebuild the team. And then they can insert Malik at sometime late in the season or next year. But if the way it works out, if they can get Nakobe Dean with their first pick, go a little defense, best defensive player still on the board, I think they'd be pretty happy.
I can absolutely see them going this route. And, I'm a little surprised you didn't have them taking a wide receiver, just given that's a big need. But
I know, and I
get it.
Burks out of Arkansas, but the fourth best wide receiver at 16 feels tough.
Yeah. No, I definitely get
the best wide receiver, but again, it's just the messaging of that. You know what I mean? And so you're missing on maybe the best linebacker for the fourth best wide receiver. That's tough.
Yeah. No, it's hard. That's where it comes down to: are you drafting based on best available, or are you trying to fill needs? And they all say draft based on best available. But you can understand how it's tempting when you have certain glaring needs that should be a priority. So we got the Chargers here at 17 then. Actually, real quick, should we go through 1 through 16 and recap those, or should we just keep
going?
Sure,
yeah.
Right,
go for it.
Let's do it. So Jacksonville with 1 takes Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan, the edge. Detroit Lions go with Kayvon Thibodeau. Houston Texans, Trayvon Walker. So we get 3 edges off the board there right off the bat. Number 4, the New York Jets take offensive tackle Evan Neal, followed by another tackle, Ike Ekwonu, going to the New York Giants. Carolina Panthers take the first quarterback, Malik Willis. He's off the board at 6. The New York Giants select safety Kyle Hamilton at 7. Falcons go back to quarterback here with Kenny Pickett, get their guy there. Seahawks at number 9 take Sauce Gardner, the corner. New York Jets go with wide receiver, the first wide receiver off the board, Garrett Wilson. Washington Commanders at 11 then take the next wide receiver in Drake London out of USC. Then the Minnesota Vikings at number 12 take Derek Stingley Jr. as the second, are debatably number 1 corner prospect, right up there with Sauce Gardner. Houston Texans then go back to the offensive line after addressing edge with Charles Cross. Jameson Williams, the debatable top receiver in the class, going to Baltimore Ravens at 14. Philly taking linebacker Devin Lloyd, and then linebacker Nakobe Dean going right after him to the New Orleans Saints. So that brings us to number 17 here with the Los Angeles Chargers. Tempting one here is they could go a couple different ways, but I think for them, the opportunity to then really just shore up your tackle spots and have 2 dominant tackles of back-to-back classes, I think says a lot about what they feel they have in Justin Herbert and what they're committing to the guy. I'm going to go with Trevor Penning out of UNI, a really good offensive tackle prospect that they could use at right tackle here opposite Rashawn Slater. So I'm going to go with Trevor Penning. And now the Chargers have completely shored up some big needs on their offensive line and can really focus on other aspects of the team. They made some big offseason additions, as we know, with Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson. So this helps them address the offensive side of things.
It's interesting. You like him more than Rayman out of Central Michigan.
I do. I think Penning is one of those guys that, yes, he gets some knocks because he played at UNI and not a Power 5 school or Power 5 conference, I should say. But I think Penning delivers that type of ideal size, I guess, for the position. And
well, he'd be playing right. He's going to be playing right tackle because they have
Rashawn Slater,
who is an all-world rookie season from out of Northwestern. So yeah, I don't hate that, especially size of the right tackle and someone who it's a lot easier to come on in and say, hey, you're going to be playing the right tackle than the left tackle. And
the thing is, like, nowadays too, I dropped my pen here. Nowadays, the tackle spots are becoming less important in terms of like only left tackle because teams are having dominant pass rushers at both sides of the ball. And with so much movement in and out of the pocket, quarterbacks have their backs turned a lot of different ways and can be, turned around. So having both sides of the field taken care of, I mean, think about the advantage these guys would have in a division with some really good pass rushers, and you're competing with dominant offenses. You got to keep pace. This is a good way towards going to that. And I do think Penning, I have him as the next best available tackle prospect.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the Eagles at 18. I think they need a corner, and Andrew Booth Jr. from Clemson is still on the board. So,
all right.
I think they make the call there. 6 foot, almost 200 pounds. Played at Clemson, so played against good competition, and you know what? They needed a someone else to add to that defense. And now, if you're looking at it, you went with linebacker with them. I went with corner. They have an explosive offense. They still probably need a wide receiver, but there's still a lot of wide receivers still on the board. They got a ton more picks still. I think for them to get a corner who you could argue it could be a number 1 corner in a year that you don't have 2 really great corners in Stingley and Sauce Gardner that already went in this draft. So I like Booth Jr. I like his size, and I like the pick for Philly.
I'm glad you went that route because it kind of mixes things up a little bit. I was expecting Trent McDuffie there, but I like
McDuffie. I do. I really do. I just don't love. What I struggle with him is he's a sophomore. He's young. I think the Eagles are a team that was a playoff team last year. I think people forget that. And I think that the Eagles are not as far away, especially in the NFC, from causing some real noise and maybe even winning that division. And I think that McDuffie's a little bit more of a prospect versus Junior, who's the guy who's going to come in and contribute day one. And I think for a team of the Eagles, multiple first-round picks, you need that. You need guys who you're absolutely surefire going to come in and compete day one.
Yeah,
now they go
that's
McDuffie.
Fair.
They go McDuffie. I'm not going to hate on him. They need corner help, and I think he's a good prospect. But I like Booth Jr. out of Clemson.
I like the pick too because I also think that with his slight injury and his lack of testing, he didn't participate in his pro day. A lot of people, he's falling down boards, whereas he may have been considered top 2, top 3 cornerback in this class, right up there with those other guys, given his ball skills. I mean, this guy catches everything.
Yep.
And in this day and age, you need guys that can convert these turnovers and create takeaways, because that's what the name of the game is. We see guys like Trayvon Diggs who can screw up every now and then, but they're such a hot commodity because of the turnovers they create. Booth Jr. is a guy that's going to do that in the NFL. So the Saints come back here at 19, and I originally had them here in this spot taking Matt Corral, and I'm going to have them taking Matt Corral. So I think the Saints get another shot here to turn around and take a quarterback after passing on one on 16. There they got a linebacker. Let's go with a guy that doesn't have to have the pressure right off the bat, but we can get a guy. We get that 5th-year option with him if things with Jameis don't work out. I think the Saints, knowing with Pittsburgh right behind them, Pittsburgh might very well take a quarterback. And I think the Saints just want to get out ahead of this thing and take a guy that they think could be first-round talent worthy. And Matt Corral is next in that list, in my opinion, alongside Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett. So they get their quarterback here, and no pressure really right off the bat.
Well, he's from, he played Ole Miss, so the region and SEC has an understanding of a guy like Matt Corral. I like Matt Corral a lot. I think that Matt Corral has very good upside. Matt Corral reminds me a little bit of, there's so many names floating through my head right now. Zach Wilson. And that scares me a little bit because as you see guys who are a little bit slight of frame, a little bit undersized, who are, kind of fluidly mobile, I think they can struggle in the NFL. And there's one thing I wanted to bring up. Matt Corral, he ran the ball for 614 yards and 11 touchdowns, only threw for 20 touchdowns in that offense, with names. Oh, God. Head coach. There's just too many names. We're talking about too many names. It's killing me that I can't think of his name right now. The head coach of Ole Miss.
I know. I'm just gonna let you stew on it.
What I'm talking about.
Okay, Lane Kiffin.
Lane Kiffin. Thank you. Throw me a lifeline. I just look at his chubby cheeks right now and his double chin. Lane Kiffin, and that offense, it's concerned me. I mean, like a lot of people were so excited. Lane comes in. Matt Corral's going to have, a huge jump. And in the biggest moments, Matt Corral ran the ball and not threw the ball at times. And that is a concern, especially for a guy listed at 6'2", more like a 6'1.5" to me, plays smaller than the 6'2" listing and doesn't exactly have the biggest arm strength. I think but again, if the Saints are in a great spot to take Willis, Pickett, or Corral because they have the best version of the sit behind this guy for a year. You can win with Jameis next year if he's healthy and coming off the knee injury, especially the NFC South. You could get a playoff berth with Jameis Winston if things go well. So, and Jameis is a guy that I know he's a little weird out there eating W's, but I think he has a lot to offer to learn from as well from young quarterbacks. Be like, hey, I was the first overall pick, and this is my career now. Like, here's some of the mistakes I made. Here's where you should, avoid these, pitfalls or things like that.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought you were going to ask that the receivers and the supporting cast he played with, I was like, shoot, I don't know, man. I don't
No,
know
no,
what the
Lane
receivers
Kiffin.
were,
Lane
but
Kiffin.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
just
yeah,
talking about
yeah,
so many
yeah,
names right now.
yeah.
Steelers, Jordan Davis. I think it's easy at this point. If he's still on the board for them, the quarterbacks are gone. To the steel curtain, regenerating, having a guy like him with T.J. Watt, that is going to be nasty, 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 nasty. And I think they love the
That
fact that Jordan
interior with
Davis. Yeah,
Cam Hayward and Jordan
Cam
Davis on
Hayward
the
and
interior would be
big
pretty
boys,
terrifying.
big boys. Yeah, a lot of space for T.J. Watt to work.
Yeah, I definitely understand the pick. I think the only other thing I would have them doing here is either taking a corner, maybe Trent McDuffie would make sense here, or a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Just because they lost Juju, they don't really have a number 3 right now. I mean, Anthony Miller's that guy at this point in time. So
Hey, him and Mitch have a relationship.
they do have a relationship. Maybe they can rekindle something there. But I also don't see Pittsburgh taking a first round receiver. So I think the next best pick is Jordan Davis, just a stud. And they've already talked this year, Mike Tomlin has, about how, well, Jordan Davis isn't going to be to us at 20, so it's not even worth discussing. So that
Yeah.
alone makes you think if he gets there that they would be excited to take.
And my thought with Pittsburgh not taking a wide receiver, first up, A, in our draft, the way it's fallen, if Jordan Davis is there, they take him. But B, is that Pittsburgh is historically so good at finding the Antonio Browns in the 3rd and 4th. Like, they will find a guy, and he will be good.
Yeah. They'll have opportunities elsewhere in the draft to take one there. So comes to the New England Patriots, and this is a team that could really go a couple different ways as well. But if you are, this is where I'm going to probably separate and go away from what I think the team will do and go more towards what I just really want them to do, like shaking them, like take a wide receiver for the love of God, just take a player. And if Chris Olave is here at this point,
oh yeah,
like you got to give Mac Jones some help here, guys. Like
I love that pick.
There are tons of offensive linemen already off the board. You could go with a project if you want, but why not just get a wide receiver that could get open and get this guy some help?
A proven wide receiver, yeah.
Yeah, so you gotta go, especially like a route runner like him, someone that could go in the slot. They like those types of guys, the Wes Welkers, the Julian Edelmans. Chris Olave's an elevated version of that coming out of college. You got to go with to me, you got to go that route if you're New England here. But I could see them being tempted to go on the defensive side of the ball because that's Bill Belichick, and he does what he does.
No, listen, I think it's a great pick because it's the one. Chris Olave works with Mac Jones, I think, really well. I think they could have a really great relationship. And I think it
get the yards after the catch,
It leaves open perfect for the Packers at 22 to make their first pick. And I think they'd be very happy if Treylon Burks from Arkansas, the wide receiver, is still there. I've heard some people rank him as high as 2 and the wide receiver board. I mean, he is big, 6'2", 225 physical. He is going to fill that, Devontae Adams role of like a big physical red zone target. And I trust him to not be a bust because Aaron Rodgers, what wide receiver's ever been a bust with Aaron Rodgers? I hate to admit it, but he does just give guys opportunities. Not gonna be a bust. And I think they'd be happy to take a Treylon Burks at 22, knowing they still have another pick in the first round coming up.
Something they absolutely need to do because obviously, you lose Devontae Adams. You got to go with someone here in the first round for the first time since 2004 and take a skill position player.
Absolutely.
You just got to go and do it. So he's a really quality option here. Some would argue, as you mentioned, a value at 22. I think that's a good pick. And, Green, they could have gone maybe Jahan Dotson, but really it's kind of a pick your poison. And Treylon Burks certainly gives them that size advantage maybe on the perimeter that you would want, as you mentioned. So the Arizona Cardinals come here, and I think they're going to go with Tyler Linderbaum. I think
great pick.
They need offensive line interior help, and he's such a good prospect, and he's just falling based on need and kind of how things have shaken out for us here. But I did have him initially listed as my top pick for the Arizona Cardinals. He fell here, and I think they'd be wise to take him at this spot.
I had him going within this next couple picks. Cowboys,
Okay.
Bills, I could have seen them both going for it. Titans as well. Because remember, if your team need is a guard and you draft Linderbaum, you immediately get yourself a starting center, which frees up whoever was your starting center to move, to rotate. Like it gives you flexibility. You don't think I'm going to draft Linderbaum and he's going to play guard for me. He's going to play center. So, but you think about like your own team, for example, like the Bears did that with when they got Daniels out of Iowa. Like, oh, well, he's really a center, but it's like, okay, well, we have Cody Whitehair who's a center, but now you have flexibility. You can find guys and move them around. So I love that pick. Cowboys 24 on the board. Ding, 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 ding. I got to take a second here and look. They have needs. I think they would love that Jordan Davis still there. He's not. I think that Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State is speaking to them. I also think they need interior offensive line help.
Yes.
So I'm going to. They could use a safety too. Daxton Hill out of Michigan. Yeah, it's hard because I had them with. All right, I will go. I think we'll go Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. I don't think that they could pass up the fact that adding another piece to that defense. That defense was good and great at times last year, and I think adding a piece like Jermaine Johnson shows the maturity of Jerry Jones of finding like, hey, don't go for the flash and go for what's a really quality pick there, and a guy who. I've seen as high as 12, scraping the top 10, possibly. He is a freak at 6'5", 255, and certainly adds to a Dallas defense that has problems already.
Totally agree. And, he's the best player available at this point, I would say. You mentioned he's kind of been all over the board, but as high as inside the top 10 or just outside of it. They could have gone with Zion Johnson or Kenyon Green, for that interior offensive line spot. But I do think they probably will go this route as well if it falls the way we have it here. Jermaine Johnson to the Cowboys seems like it makes a lot of sense. To me, the Buffalo Bills here at 25 it is the biggest no-brainer of the first round to me. To me, this is exactly like what Najee Harris to the Steelers was last year. Everyone knew that they were going to take Najee Harris. It was a big need. I think everyone knows the Buffalo Bills are going to take Breece Hall, the best running back in this draft by far, and a big need for this team. It's not that Zach Moss and Devin Singletary are bad. They're just not. Neither of them is a full 3-down running back. Yeah. And it always seems out of sync. They've had injuries at that position, and they've struggled with getting the production that they've needed out of both at various times throughout the year. You get this team a solid run game, and I mean, look out NFL. That could be the missing piece to putting this team completely over the edge and into the conversation of an actual Super Bowl versus just an AFC championship year to year. So Breece Hall to the Bills, I hope that's not a huge whiff on my part, but I think it makes all the sense in the world for them to go for this.
Listen, I don't know. The only thing I would argue is that I think Kenneth Walker III is close. I don't think it's a clear, like Najee was the clear number one last year. I think Kenneth Walker's closer than maybe you think. But I do think if they have their eyes on him, I don't mind them taking him late in the first round because the Bills need offensive line help. They need a guard, maybe two. But you're going to find quality and people to plug and play in the second and third round. Breece Hall will not be there again by the time they pick. He would go early second, with people being way more content taking a running back in the second round, the first. So you need him. You have a need. He is explosive. You have your young quarterback. You have your young wide receiver tied on up. Go get yourself your running back to pair with them for the next 3 years for this run. And he can be a workhorse, and he is explosive. And, he's got a little LaShawn McCoy to him. When you watch the film, it's a LaShawn McCoy, but he is 5'11". He's not small. So I don't hate the pick.
And he's kind
Ty-
of patient too, like Le'Veon Bell, like as well. So
Can I just say though, if Traylon Burks, the Arkansas wide receiver, is still at the available at 24 with the Cowboys, look out. Jerry loves his Arkansas guys, and I can see him like, well, we got rid of, my names. Don't give it.
What is
Don't
Amari?
give it to me. Amari Cooper. Don't give it to me. Yeah, we got rid of Mark Cooper. Yeah, you need fill need. Titans. That's my Jerry Jones. Titans. Or when he just goes Los Angeles. Listen, the Titans need a lot of help. They need tackle. They need guard. I think offensive line is really important to them. Raymond still on the board. It's out of Central Michigan. I think they'll go with that and try to shore up that offensive line. Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan is the pick.
All right, sounds good. He's I'm reading right now that he was a foreign exchange student from Austria, and he developed himself into a tight end prospect. And here he is at an offensive
just like
tackle.
Central Michigan do. They take tight ends, they turn them into other things. J.J. Watt and Bernard Raymond.
Yep. They find a way to just get athletes and put them in there. Yeah, I think offensive line. I probably would have gone with either Zion or Kenyon here, but I don't hate the pick at all. I think the offensive line was a clear pick at this point, given how things fell. So yeah, I definitely understand that. So we're at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think that they're happy to take either one of those two guards. I think guard is a very clear need for this team, one of the few glaring needs for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to go with you see, it's kind of tough because I have them so close in order here, but it's Zion Johnson or Kenyon
Go
Green.
with
I'll
Green.
probably go with
I
Kenyon
like
Green.
I like Green a little bit better.
Green.
I like Green mainly because he played it in the SEC. I got to be honest, like that to me says something. Listen, Zion Johnson,
I mean, and
Boston
he's
College,
huge. He's
Boston
330 pounds.
Yeah, Boston College is not nothing, but I mean, Texas A&M going up against the defensive lines that you see in the SEC, he is a prototypical guard body, 6'4", 330.
Yeah, it's a huge dude. So yeah, that'd be a welcome sight there for Tom Brady and company in Tampa. So now you get the Green Bay Packers again. How about this? The Bears fan getting to pick both Green Bay Packers choices.
And I'm being kind to them. I think Traylon Burks is a good pick early.
And you're coming right back with Jahan Dotson, doubling down on the receiver.
No, I'm not.
Wouldn't that be wild if they went back-to-back receivers?
They certainly
could.
They could. They
could
need it. They really do need it. I think though they also need offensive line help as well.
Yeah.
They need a tight end, but again, I don't see a tight end with a first-round grade that I like. And I think they do need some help along the defensive line. They lost
we got
Zaire. My brain. I just got off of an 8-day.
Zadarius Smith. Is that who you're looking for?
Zadarius Smith. I just got off an 8-day Disney vacation, and now we're doing this. Listen, I actually think they're going to go defense. The Packers are one of those organizations that they're not going to load up too much on one side early. The second pick, I have them making the move. The Minnesota kid, Boyd Mafe, the defensive lineman out of Minnesota. He's a guy that is 6'4".
How do you pronounce his name?
I've always heard it Mafe.
Okay, I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. I didn't know how it was. I was
Boy Mafe.
Okay,
is how I've heard it, and he's a guy that I think can add to his frame, and is someone that I think the Packers look at themselves constantly, always as creating that balance. They want, if they're going to go offense, they're going to go defense. And I think this is a pick that they see as a, hey, we got to deal with Justin Fields. Depending on what Detroit does, you think maybe they'll go quarterback. And so knowing that if they want to stay on top of their division, they got to stay ahead of that. And they can't let their defense take too big of a slide. Yeah,
no, I'm right there with you. I totally get that aspect. So,
and I would really hate it if they took the wide receiver, because they could do it. And that would make me so mad, because both of those guys just burned me for the next 3 years. And that would I mentally can't make that pick.
That would be pretty devastating for the NFC North, particularly the Bears there, though. But hey, Bears have that second round pick. Maybe they'll scoop up a good corner at that spot. So Kansas City here with back-to-back picks will
Yeah.
split the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll go first, and they have a couple needs here on the defensive side of the ball. They could go. I mean, Trent McDuffie is really tempting there, and they could go with a Devontae Wyatt. They could go with a receiver too. I'm gonna go Trent McDuffie though, because I just think he's the best available player.
I agree.
And they certainly need help in that aspect. So Trent McDuffie off the board. They get their corner and help their secondary, and now they can focus on something else here for you.
See, no, I'm so glad you did this, because I'm going to do this with and I hope the Chiefs do this, and I'm going to make the pick right now. Daxton Hill, the safety out of Michigan.
All right.
I think. Listen,
that's who I had them picking here. So yeah,
a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, well, they need to go wide receiver." They don't need Patrick Mahomes. A lot like Aaron Rodgers or any of those guys is going to make wide receivers better. They got Juju. I think they will draft a wide receiver. Look in the second, third round, fourth round. They'll take a guy who they feel like they can turn into. Andy Reid can find weapons and turn them into things. But I think at this point in time and late in the first round, I think the Chiefs make a statement if this is the way the draft falls. What a statement for them to make. A guy you could argue is the third best corner and a guy who's the second best safety, both with first round grades on them, shoring up the back end of that defense, dealing with Devontae Adams, dealing with Mike Williams, the quarterbacks and the Jerry Jeudy, all the guys they have to deal with in the AFC West. I just think this makes a ton of sense, and they have to show their fans they're committed to that side of the football.
I like it. Yep. And there are several wide receiver prospects later. They pick 50 in the second round. I'm sure they could get someone there.
Yeah.
Maybe if they want to reach a little bit and get a Justin
Pickens
Ross
out of Georgia
or Pickens, someone will be available for them to take at that spot. Meanwhile, yes, they got Justin Reed to kind of help offset the loss of Honey Badger, but Daxton Hill coming in there helps give them a lot of security there in the defensive backfield. And so they get Hill and Trent McDuffie. That's a pretty good first round there for the Kansas City Chiefs, I'd say, especially from where they pick at 29 and 30. So then at 31, the Cincinnati Bengals come up here. And for me, I was kind of debating whether or not they would go linebacker or whether or not they would go back to the offensive line. I think given what we saw last year, they got to try and go offensive line here. And to me, they're going to go with a versatile option in Tyler Smith out of Tulsa. Because he's an offensive tackle that a lot are, saying he very easily could move to guard as well. And I don't know where Cincinnati would have him, probably at guard. But it gives them options. And I think he's one of those guys that could surprise a lot of people and really bring forth some value there, despite maybe something he'll go in the second round. So with the Bengals, I think they'll just try and get out ahead of things here and go and grab an offensive lineman. You got to try and help Joe Burrow as much as you can. And they did in the offseason, getting Alex Kappa, getting Ted Karras, getting Lael Collins, go right back at it. And now you've got an entirely revamped offensive line to start the 2022 season. And that'd be a real scary unit for sure.
An interesting pick to end the draft. It aligns with 32, all because that trade with the Rams. They're a team that early on now we have them taking an edge rusher. I could see them going back to the defensive line, especially with Karlaftis out of Purdue still available at the end of the first round. I think he's a frame guy that you just look at him and say, good golly, that he's a freak athlete, 6'4", 265, the way he carries the weight. Listen, I think Roger McCreary out of Auburn is an option in the linebacker, the cornerback spot, excuse me. But honestly, as I look at this, I think for them getting someone who's a field general on the back end of their defense, I'll go with Lewis Sine out of Georgia, the safety, to end up the first round. They go 2 defensive picks. I know that wide receiver is a need for them, but again, they have that early pick in the next round, and that could be a Jahan Dotson. That could be a George Pickens. the wide receiver out of Georgia. They'll get one of those two guys or someone else here early in the second round, getting another wide receiver. Watson, who's out of North Dakota State, a lot of people like. I was watching a little bit of film on him. I think there's places for Detroit to find a wide receiver to help. They need a linebacker. Getting a safety is the next best thing to help with the defense. And so
you like him over like Kyler Gordon, the corner, or Jalen Petrie, the other safety.
I just think I do like him over Petrie, but my thing more is I like the fact that I understand corner still a need for Detroit. Safety's still is just a big of a need, and I think that Sign is a guy out of Georgia, played the big games, physical, 6 foot, carries 220 really well. Good rangy guy. I just like him as a prospect, the growth of him, what he could become as a safety, especially in the NFC North, where you need a guy who can cover the field, where you deal with the wide receivers of Justin Jefferson that Minnesota has, dealing with Aaron Rodgers. I think safety is just a little bit bigger of a need, and I like him as a prospect.
Yeah, so this surprised me a little bit because I would think at 32, the Lions, why not get the 5th-year option with a Ridder? Why not?
I just don't think Ridder
flyer.
Maybe that's something we could talk about right now. I am not high on Ridder at all. I would take Howell over Ridder, and I'm not high on Howell either. I struggle with these quarterbacks. As I mentioned at the top of it, Kenny Pickett's the only one who I honestly think in 5 years from now we'll still be talking about. Honestly, maybe that's my bold prediction, but I think Malik Willis and Matt Corral have a type of careers that just don't go where you want and expect them to go. I think a little bit that's, both of them have a little bit of Mitch Trubisky in them. I think both of them have better arm talent. But I think especially Matt Corral, I don't see much of a difference between him and Mitch. And maybe he's got more of a dog in him, and maybe he ends up going to a better situation. But I just don't think any of these guys can end up in situations that are perfect and that allow for them to be the starter still in 5 years. Kenny Pickett has a chance depending on where he ends up. If it's New Orleans, if it's Pittsburgh, I think there's a good chance Kenny Pickett, Atlanta, they build around him right. I think there's a good chance Kenny Pickett's still starting quarterback in 5 years from now. And that 5th-year option has already been picked up and he's on to his next deal or ready to go. But think about how quickly, guys fall in the league. The Baker Mayfields of the world, number 1 pick 5 years ago, no, 5th-year option, not getting picked up. And here we are. I know it seems blasphemous to say in that way, but I'm just not sold on it. I was way more sold on guys like Trevor Lawrence. And you see how hard it was for Trevor Lawrence in a bad situation to be a great quarterback in the NFL. Takes real special to be really good, especially early. And I just don't know if I see it. And I just don't think Desmond Ridder's a guy who I'd even want to worry about with that 5th-year option. I think if the Lions want to take a flyer on him in the 3rd round, if he's still available early in the 3rd, fine. But I don't think he's the type of guy. I think Jared Goff is better than all these guys right now, especially starting today. And I think the Lions are an organization that is trying to keep some sort of stability and build some sort of stability. And I think Goff offers that them. Again, for this year, they have so much money tied up to the quarterback room because of what they're paying Matt Stafford still. I think at this point in time, they would rather just have a fresh, clean cut from Goff at the end of next year and not be like, well, now we got to see what Ridder has, and be still probably picking near the top of the draft, available to go get that guy then that they really feel is that guy. That's what I would do if I was Detroit. They may have different plans.
Yeah, so we just had 3 quarterbacks going in the 1st round, with Malik Willis first off the board at 6 to Carolina, and then Pickett to Atlanta at 8. And then all the way down at 19, we have the Saints taking Matt Corral. So those are the 3 first-round quarterbacks. I think Howell and Ridder will go in the 2nd round. That's my guess. If it gets to that point, but I could easily see four quarterbacks going in the 1st round, maybe even 5. I mean, who knows? Pittsburgh might take Howell at 20. Who knows? I really, They've
Would you be
a
happy?
lot of
I
these
mean,
teams.
do you think I'm way off on that? I don't see any of these guys. I'm sick of riding the hype train. Listen, I get the hype train for a guy like Trey Lance. I'm still excited to watch Trey Lance because of the size. And but like Malik Willis, everyone's like oohing and awing. He played Matt Corral, Liberty versus Ole Miss. And I know Liberty versus Ole Miss is not necessarily fair because the talent dispersion. But the guy was bad. I mean, he was bad in that game. And in the big moments, he ran the ball way more than he threw. That is such a red flag for me. Such a red flag. Sam Howell was the second Heisman favorite behind Spencer Rattler, and he had a very shaky season. And in the big games for him against South Carolina, against Boston College, he didn't help his team overcome and actually win those games to be in a position to win the ACC when Clemson had a down year. I mean, he struggled. You're in the area.
But to be fair, he lost everyone this year. Like, he lost so many pieces to the NFL draft last year.
And I like how, but watching him physically, he just reminds me of a slightly bigger Baker Mayfield.
I do agree with that. I mean, I don't think Howell's like, the next big thing. I don't think he's gonna. I do buy the Malik Willis hype in terms of the potential. I mean, I wouldn't be. I'm not going to say he's going to be a great quarterback in the NFL. I don't know. I really don't. I don't know if Kenny Pickett is going to be. But I think Malik Willis, he has such a strong base. Like, his legs are tree trunks.
Yeah.
That is something we haven't seen. It is reminiscent of Big Ben in a lot of ways. Like, how he was able to thwart off would-be sacks just with his hips and his turning of his body. Some of the plays he made were magical, and you want that in the NFL. You want a guy that can create magic like a Lamar Jackson can. And so, the point is well taken in terms of his throwing. Lamar had a lot of games where he decided to run too, and that's worked out all right. So, and now he played at a bigger school in a bigger conference, but I think it's worth it to go after a guy like that if you think he's your guy. So that's why I think it's him and Pickett as 1 and 2. But I think in terms of safe, I think Corral's right in the middle there at like some guy who's intriguing. He has really good accuracy, and played in a big school, big conference. But there are question marks with decision making and things like that too. And Howell's a similar way. Ritter's a winner, and I think that's his biggest asset. He's a guy that turned a program around almost single-handedly and really helped.
Ritter's mobile. He's not necessarily like a run. It's hard.
Fast. He's fast.
Listen, as always with the quarterbacks, I get excited to watch them in the next level.
Sure.
I think so much of it's going to have to do with where they end up. I'll just say this, as a Bears fan, and my team has been so quarterback needy, I feel really comfortable the fact that I have Justin Fields over any of the five guys we just mentioned.
Justin Fields would be the first overall pick, barring, if Jacksonville didn't take him, which they wouldn't, then it'd be Detroit taking him.
I also think Trey Lance would be picked number 1 over these guys as well.
Yeah.
I don't know about Zach Wilson, because Zach Wilson, I think a lot of it was just people fell in love with him late. And it has a little bit of a Malik Willis vibe too, where he's like, you didn't really watch him play, and then you watch the highlights, like, wow, this guy's kind of crazy. But
and then you saw the pro day throw.
I would rather have Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett than Zach Wilson. I was never high on Zach Wilson last year when we were doing this. And Mac Jones, I think it's interesting. Mac Jones, I think, would have been right in the conversation for, do you take him number 1? I personally right now, especially after what I've seen from his rookie year, I would much rather have Mac Jones than starting next year than any of the 5 guys we talked about. I do think the upside for Pickett and Willis is there over Mac Jones.
Okay.
There's a little bit of that upside.
See, I think Pickett's upside is capped, and I think that's comparative to Mac Jones in a lot of ways. I think Willis could absolutely crash through the ceiling, or he could fall through the floor before he even gets off. So that's you roll the dice with some of the prospects like that.
I personally think Matt Corral's going to be a lot like Mitch Trubisky in the sense where you just get frustrated. You say to yourself, No, I mean, yeah, he can do it.
Yeah.
But is he the guy you want to build around? Do I want to pay him? Because remember, quarterbacks now, when they get that big contract, you're talking 35 million plus. So I just don't see that from these guys. I'm worried with Malik Willis. I think Malik Willis has the talent. Like, yes, you're right, the ceiling to possibly be that. But that's a lot of growth from Liberty and the small.
That's why environment matters with that.
It does.
Where he gets taken matters because he's gonna need some time.
So in a dream scenario for you as a Steelers fan, do you want any of these quarterbacks, or are you comfortable saying,
yeah,
I'm going to ride it out with Mitch, and I want to see what the draft has next year?
I want Malik Willis to fall to them at 20. I mean, if that were the case, I think they absolutely pull the trigger and take Malik Willis. I'm not crazy about Kenny Pickett, but I would be fine with them taking him at 20.
Pittsburgh kid.
I think that'd be. I think you gotta take shots, and if a number 1 or number 2 quarterback in the draft class falls to you at pick number 20, I think that's like, hey, like, let's just grab him. Like, if it doesn't work out, it's not going to kill you. You didn't move up and throw a bunch of other picks.
You can blow your draft up for it. Yeah.
Yeah. You stayed pat and you get the 5th-year option. I'd be happy with that. I would be a little concerned if they went, and took a Howell or a Ritter at pick 20, because that would, I'm so much more reluctant about those guys.
But with Willis,
Corral, I don't know. I would feel lukewarm.
Corral's you're on the fence. All right. No, I get it. I also think there is something to be said. Any of the guys they pick will sit behind Mitch Trubisky, and I do think it's not the worst thing in the world. I think Mitch is going to be that next guy in the league for the next 5 years who bounces around a lot, and teams want him to usher in a new quarterback because I think he's a great locker room guy. He's got the experience of dealing with chaos, and he's got the, like, hey, here's what I did, here's what I didn't do, learn from me or not. And I think he's good for the room, and he's not intimidating. He's not he's not like Jameis in the room. And I think it's the reason why, and credit to Marcus Mariota as well. I think he'll keep bouncing around for another couple of years because they're just not intimidating.
That's how you carry yourself.
Baker has that struggle right now as well. You're intimidated with him in the room because you're like, what is he going to say? What's he going to do? Even if when you tell him he's going to be your backup quarterback, what's he going to say? What's he going to do? He's got a million commercials. Everyone knows who he is.
Cam Newton.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that in an NFL locker room. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see. And Monday's show is going to be great.
It is. I can't wait for the recap episode. Thursday, NFL draft. So I'm sure you all will be tuning in, as will we, for the 3-day NFL draft week that it is.
In Vegas.
It's in Vegas, the Sin City, getting ready to host the NFL draft. I bet they'll put on a really cool show. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the set looks like and all of that they've got set up there. And we'll see what the quarterbacks do. So we'll see if we're right. We'll see if we're wrong. And I'm sure we're going to have a couple hits and quite a few misses, but that's what this is all about. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
we're guessing. So yeah, have fun, everyone. We'll see you back here next Monday with our recap episode of the 2022 NFL Draft.